this person who used to be Canada's youngest dangerous offender. He has murdered a 3-year-old child, raped a 3-month-old baby who needed reconstruction surgery, and is now housed in a women's prison in BC that actually has a mother-baby program. So he's around incarcerated women and their babies and children. Another example that I shared was a rape shelter in Vancouver that last year had a male who identified as female staying in the rape shelter and posting publicly online photos of his erection in the morning in the bathroom and bragging about going around the women's shelter with a bulging erection showing around all the women who were staying there, to be away from male violence. Atrocities are happening to women and children, and there's a major medical scandal happening in Canada right now.
Drea Humphrey here with Rebel News, standing beside Amy Hamm, a mother of 2 young boys, a hardworking BC nurse educator who's been deemed transphobic for her off-duty advocacy for things like safe spaces for women and children. Now, I'm catching up with Amy just after quite the quasi-judicial trial, a disciplinary hearing that was brought on against Hamm by her licensing body. All right, Amy, here you are, still standing, I might add. Oh my goodness. We won't know the actual outcome, what's going to happen with your profession until sometime in the new year. But thanks for being on Rebel News to talk about what just took place in your quasi-judicial trial.
Yeah, no problem, Drea. So essentially, I just finished a 21-day hearing that's been spread out over, the whole process has been more than 3 years, and my nursing license is on the line. I could lose my ability to have the career that I've had for more than 12 years with no issues, never a patient complaint, nothing like that. This is activists who I've never met, never spoken to, complaining to the BC College of Nurses and Midwives that I'm transphobic. And the event that started this all was putting up an I Heart J.K. Rowling billboard.
Right. That's when you and I first met back in 2020. I think the billboard only stayed up for just over 30 hours. Cancel culture mobsters, including City Councillor of Vancouver, Sarah Kirby-Young, deemed it as hateful. And ever since, you've been fighting or having to fight, defend your right to stand up for, like I said, things like safe spaces for women, children. Now, I hate to make you do this. Well, I'm not going to make you, but I'm going to ask you to do it again because I know you got emotional when you were describing this in your hearing. And that was some of the examples of biological males coming into women's spaces. Can you recap some of that for us?
Sure. I mean, in Canada, we have this person who used to be Canada's youngest dangerous offender. He has murdered a 3-year-old child, raped a 3-month-old baby who needed reconstruction surgery, and is now housed in a women's prison in BC that actually has a mother-baby program. So he's around incarcerated women and their babies and children. Another example that I shared was a rape shelter in Vancouver that last year had a male who identified as female staying in the rape shelter and posting publicly online photos of his erection in the morning in the bathroom and bragging about going around the women's shelter with a bulging erection showing around all the women who were staying there, to be away from male violence. And then another example that really hits me is this Toronto nurse, Rotary Estrada. She was murdered in a home invasion while her 3 daughters slept down the hallway. And her husband, who was working on night shift, came home in the morning, found her unrecognizable. The 2 men who murdered her were sentenced to life in prison. And one of them, unbeknownst to the jury, was identifying as female from the time he got arrested and is seeking transfer to a female prison. So, a raping, murdering male seeking this transfer. And there's no reason to believe that he won't get that transfer.
Well, when you go through the list of those examples, it's shocking and disturbing to me that someone can't advocate for safe spaces in such situations without being persecuted, basically. Now, you had great counsel representing you. They were provided to you by the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedom. You had Lisa Bildy and you had Karen Basto representing you. And for the college, there were a couple lawyers, one of whom was blue-haired Barbara Finley, who calls herself a old white cisgender queer activist lawyer. And that lawyer actually tried to have your speech compelled further in a way. She wanted to have the panel ruling over the matter compel you to use the terms trans men and trans women. Tell us what term you use and what was going through your head when that was happening.
So the term that I used and that I generally use is trans-identified male and trans-identified female, which I think is a lot easier to understand than trans man, trans woman, and refers to biological reality. So she insisted that I was being discriminatory using those terms, despite the fact that they were not referring to any individuals in the first place. And anyways, the panel had to make a ruling on it, and thankfully they said that I didn't have to use the terminology she tried to compel me to use, but so, kind of said, if you can do that, so you're being nice, essentially. And I didn't use it after that. I think I mostly switched to saying biological male, biological female. There are women in Canada in rape shelters, domestic violence shelters, and prisons caged with rapists. And there are children who are being sterilized by Lupron and cross-sex hormones. And they're, a lot of these are gay kids or autistic kids who are just confused, and adults are lying to them and presenting this solution to all of their mental health issues, that if they transition, they'll be doing fine. And when you think about the people that this is happening to them right now, I can kind of just put aside the way it makes me feel personally, because I just wanted to take a principled stand. And why would I back down after everything that's happened? I have to see it through.
Yeah. And that you did. You didn't back down at all. You're still not backing down. Another time when you got emotional in the trial was when you described the actual hate that's happening to you since you've been taking on this advocacy. Can you recap some of that?
Yeah, I mean, I've had death threats, rape threats, threats of violence, my photo shared online, people saying punch her if you see her in Vancouver, and 2 separate police investigations. One started recently because someone got my personal phone number and left a threatening voicemail. I'm still not sure who it was, but hopefully we'll figure that out. And yeah, my local police have helped me to make a safety plan, just because I'm not stopping this advocacy, and clearly I will continue to make the blue hairs of the world very angry. So I need to be careful. Our mainstream media, our institutions are all so captured by this ideology, and they're so quick to frame people as hateful bigots for challenging it. So if you don't already know what's going on, just have an open mind and look into it, because once, they try to say no debate, they try to shut us down so we can't even speak at all, because they know that when people figure out what's actually happening, people are horrified and they'll be right there with us. So just go and see it for yourself, because it's very clear that atrocities are happening to women and children, and there's a major medical scandal happening in Canada right now.
Do you value freedom of expression in Canada like I do? Then take a few seconds to join the fight in preserving them. Go to stopthecensorship.com to learn all about the Trudeau government's online censorship laws, and then sign and share our petition there urging the government to repeal them. Again, that's stopthecensorship.com.